The scent of lilies and overpriced air freshener hung heavy in the opulent suite, a cloying perfume that suddenly felt suffocating. "Get out," she'd said, the words sharp, like shards of glass against my skin. And then, as if to punctuate the dismissal, a wad of crisp bills, $500 by the feel of it, sailed through the air, scattering across the plush carpet between us. The silk of my robe felt suddenly coarse, the expensive thread count a mockery of the degradation. My life had become a carefully constructed facade, a porcelain doll perched precariously on a mantelpiece. For years, I'd cultivated an image of calm, of understanding, of the matriarch who always put family first. My son, Michael, was my anchor, my pride. His wife, Sarah, was meant to be the bright star in our constellation. But lately, the light had flickered, revealing shadows I'd tried so hard to ignore. Michael, bless his oblivious heart, was caught in the orbit of her escalating demands, a devoted satellite with dwindling fuel. There was the time, not long after their wedding, when she'd discovered my small collection of antique jewelry. Nothing extravagant, just pieces my mother and grandmother had cherished. I'd shown them to her, a gesture of sharing a part of my history. Her eyes, usually bright with a manufactured charm, had narrowed. "Oh, that's nice," she'd purred, her fingers idly tracing the filigree of a sapphire pendant. "Is that real gold?" The implication hung in the air, a subtle accusation of hoarding, of withholding. Later, Michael confessed she'd asked him if I'd ever considered selling any of it. "She doesn't all that," she'd apparently whispered. Then there was the anniversary trip. Michael had booked us all a weekend at a charming lakeside resort. It was a place I'd always loved, filled with nostalgic memories. Sarah had spent the entire weekend complaining. The room wasn't big enough, the food was too expensive, the Wi-Fi was spotty. She'd even huffed about the price of a single scoop of ice cream. I'd watched her, a tight knot forming in my stomach, as she meticulously documented every perceived slight on social media, framing it as a tale of hardship and inconvenience. Michael, ever the peacemaker, had tried to smooth things over, but his efforts were met with an icy silence from her, followed by a dramatic sigh that spoke volumes. I'd learned to read those sighs, to decipher the unspoken resentments that festered beneath her polished exterior. The final straw, however, wasn't a sigh or a subtle barb. It was this opulent suite, a room Michael had booked for us to celebrate his promotion. He'd wanted to spoil us, he'd said, to show his appreciation. Sarah had been beside herself with excitement, envisioning designer shopping sprees and Michelin-starred dinners. I'd been content with a quiet dinner, a chance to catch up. But as soon as we'd arrived, the atmosphere shifted. She'd taken one look at the view, then at the price tag on the minibar, and her face had fallen. "This is a lot, isn't it?" she'd said, her voice laced with a peculiar blend of awe and resentment. Michael had tried to reassure her, his smile a little too wide. "It's on me, honey. We deserve to celebrate." That's when she'd turned to me. Her eyes, usually so expressive, were like chips of ice. "Actually," she'd said, her voice dangerously calm, "I was thinking. This whole weekend is supposed to be about celebrating Michael. And frankly, I don't think presents adds much to the festivities." The air in the room seemed to solidify. Michael's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, his gaze fixed on the patterned carpet. My own breath hitched. I'd felt a wave of nausea, a disorienting sense of unreality. This was not the polite, slightly demanding woman I knew. This was something colder, something calculating. "What are you saying, Sarah?" I managed to ask, my voice a brittle whisper. She straightened her shoulders, a queen surveying her conquered territory. "I'm saying," she enunciated each word with chilling precision, "that this is celebration. Michael's promotion. Future. And I don't want you here, dampening the mood with your negativity." Her gaze swept over me, lingering on my simple robe, my age-spotted hands. "You wouldn't understand luxury. You wouldn't appreciate this. It's wasted on you." My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for escape. I opened my mouth to protest, to defend myself, to simply ask what had brought on this venom. But before I could form a coherent sentence, she took a step forward. Her hand, adorned with a gaudy diamond ring Michael had apparently worked overtime to afford, fumbled in her designer handbag. She pulled out a thick stack of bills. "Here," she spat, her voice rising now, cracking with a strange, triumphant fury. "Take this. Go buy yourself something nice. A bus ticket home. Just get out." The money, fanned out in her hand, fluttered towards me, a cascade of green purr that landed with soft rustles on the exquisite rug. The sound was a tiny punctuation mark in the deafening silence that followed. Michael finally looked up, his eyes wide with shock, but he didn't move. He was frozen, a statue carved from guilt and indecision. Sarah's chest heaved, her eyes blazing with a victory I couldn't comprehend. The scent of lilies and air freshener suddenly seemed to curdle, turning acrid, suffocating. I stood there, the scattered bills a stark testament to her contempt, the opulence of the hotel a cruel backdrop to my humiliation. In that moment, something shifted within me. The years of biting my tongue, of swallowing pride, of plastering on a placid smile, they all evaporated. The quiet endurance that had defined my relationships, particularly with Sarah, fractured. It wasn't a dramatic explosion of anger. It was a silent, cold, and absolute cessation. The humiliation was too profound, too public, too deliberately inflicted. The image of the scattered money, the scorn in her eyes, the paralyzed inaction of my own son, it was a perfect storm of disrespect. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I simply looked down at the money, then back at Sarah, a strange detachment settling over me. Her face was a mask of triumphant vindication, expecting a scene, a breakdown. She clearly relished the idea of having driven me out. "Michael," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the strained silence. It wasn't an appeal. It was a statement of fact. He finally turned his head, his eyes meeting mine, a flicker of confusion, then dawning horror. "I believe we need to have a conversation about the terms of the trust fund." Sarah's triumphant smirk faltered. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows knitted together. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice losing some of its edge, replaced by a hint of unease. "The trust fund," I repeated, my gaze never leaving Michael's. "The one established for your future. For your children's future. The one where I am the sole trustee and administrator." Michael's face, already pale, turned a ghastly white. He knew. He knew precisely what I was alluding to. He knew that the meticulously crafted financial security he'd always taken for granted was, in large part, my doing, managed under my strictest control. "Mom, what are you saying?" he stammered, taking a hesitant step towards me. I held up a hand, stopping him. My eyes, however, remained locked on Sarah. She was starting to look genuinely flustered now. The predatory gleam in her eyes had been replaced by a dawning apprehension. "I'm saying," I continued, a slow, deliberate calm enveloping me, "that the stipulations are quite clear. Financial mismanagement, excessive and frivolous spending, creating an unstable domestic environment, and demonstrably poor judgment in financial decisions are grounds for immediate review and potential reallocation of assets. And I believe," I paused, letting the weight of my words settle, "that your behavior tonight, Sarah, has provided me with ample evidence." I turned slightly, my eyes now sweeping over the extravagant suite. The gilded furniture, the expensive art on the walls, the breathtaking view, all things Michael had felt they. "This weekend," I said, my voice a low hum, "is precisely the kind of behavior that makes me question the wisdom of such extensive financial freedom without proper oversight." Sarah's mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. The color drained from her face, leaving it a waxy, unhealthy hue. The smugness had vanished, replaced by a raw, unadulterated panic. She glanced at Michael, her eyes pleading, but he couldn't meet her gaze. He was staring at me, his own future now looming uncertainly before him. "I will be in touch with our lawyer," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I gestured vaguely towards the scattered bills. Please, feel free to keep that as a parting gift. A reminder. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked towards the door. The plush carpet seemed to absorb all sound as I moved. I didn't look back. The silence behind me was heavy, thick with the unspoken realization of their folly. I stepped out of the suite, into the hushed corridor, and signaled for the elevator. The doors slid open with a soft chime, a stark contrast to the cacophony of shattered expectations I'd left behind. The immediate aftermath was a flurry of frantic, accusatory texts from Sarah, interspersed with pleading, guilt-ridden messages from Michael. His words were a pathetic echo of his paralysis in the suite. "Mom, you can't do this, she didn't mean it, we're a family." They were met with silence. My phone, once a constant stream of familial demands and social obligations, became a device I only checked for necessary communication. Then came the flying monkeys. Michael's sister, Clara, a woman who had always reveled in Sarah's calculated manipulations, called, her voice dripping with performative conc. "Earn. Oh, darling, are you all right? Michael's so upset. Sarah feels terrible. You know how she can be, a little impulsive." I listened patiently, my answers monosyllabic, offering no fuel for her gossip. She ended the call frustrated, having gleaned nothing but my unwavering calm. Sarah's panic escalated. She tried to rally support, spreading distorted narratives of my cruelty and unreasonableness. But the carefully constructed facade she'd built began to crumble. People who had witnessed her manipulative tactics firsthand, who had felt the sting of her entitlement, were not so easily swayed. The whispers started, the sideways glances. Her reputation, carefully curated through staged photos and saccharine captions, began to fray. Michael, stripped of his financial safety net, was a wreck. The promotion he'd celebrated so boisterously now felt like a gilded cage. He realized, with a crushing finality, that his perceived independence had been a carefully managed illusion, entirely dependent on my goodwill. He'd been so eager to prove his financial prowess, to provide Sarah with the lifestyle she craved, that he'd never truly considered the foundation upon which it was built. The legal correspondence was swift and decisive. The terms of the trust, meticulously drafted years ago with a foresight Sarah had never anticipated, were unambiguous. Her excessive spending, her documented outbursts, the sheer entitlement she displayed, it all played out in black and white, a testament to her own self-destruction. The reallocation of assets was not a matter of opinion, it was a matter of contract. The luxury hotel bill, the designer shopping spree she'd undoubtedly planned, the lavish lifestyle she'd expected to maintain, all of it evaporated. The silence that followed was the most satisfying part. No shouting matches, no dramatic confrontations. Just the quiet, inexorable dismantling of a gilded cage. Sarah, once so confident, found herself adrift, her entitlement now a crippling burden rather than a source of power. Michael, humbled and chastened, was forced to confront the consequences of his own complicity. The grand pronouncements of wealth and success were replaced by the stark reality of financial insecurity. I continued my life, unchanged. The lilies in my garden bloomed just as brightly, the air in my home remained fresh. There was no triumphal march, no public gloating. Just the quiet, profound satisfaction of knowing that a carefully constructed illusion of power had been exposed for what it was, and that the consequences, while swift, were entirely self-inflicted. The silence wasn't an absence of sound, it was the sound of order restored, a chilling testament to the fact that some debts, once incurred, are paid in full.